Undertale is a game that's been released for over 8 years at this point. Now, 8 years is a long time. Let's say you don't see your baby nephew for 8 years. Next you see the little tyke, he's strutting around with an iPad, skibbidying and ohioing all over the joint, and there's not a single thing you can do about it other than sit back in disbelief as you Freddy Fazbears everywhere. Most games, even the AAA ones, get forgotten after 1, maybe 2 years. From that point on, maybe there's a small diehard fanbase, if they're lucky. If it's not an IP or a franchise title, there's probably a better chance of being struck by lightning 3 times in a row. But of course there are exceptions. Games like Shadow of the Colossus, TF2, Mother 3, it's not even really... You get what I mean, right? It's hard to come up with standalone titles that remain popular and loved to this day, because I guarantee you, if a game is loved by an audience at a AAA level, that cow's getting milked. That's how industry works, baby. But when we come to indie titles, these sorts of games are a lot more commonplace. Stardew Valley, Papers, Please, Celeste, One Shot, and of course, Undertale. Those previous titles were popular and have remained popular, sure. But nothing ever took the internet by storm like Toby Fox's Undertale. Official language ports, merch out the wazoo, blog posts, Sans is in Smash. I mean, that's insane. This Earthbound-inspired adventure took my heart, and I'm sure it took many of yours too. The best of us took to computer and tablet alike, putting their creativity to the test, and then out came the fan projects. Fan art, fan blogs, fan... games. Undertale Yellow was a demo released back in late November of 2016, around a year after Undertale had first come out back in 2015. This game puts you in the shoes of the human who wielded the empty gun and the cowboy hat of the original game, the seventh Fallen, the one before Frisk, the sixth soul, Clover, the soul of justice. And well, I might as well mention it, because even to this day, people are kind of iffy on how canon soul traits are, and if they even relate to humans because of fucking hex color numbers, but at the very least, we know that the yellow soul wielded the gun because of the Omega Flowey fight. That's who you play as. That's Clover. And we saw Clover for all of 45 minutes, where they fell down into the underground, fell down into the ruins, and then fell down into the old ruins, and got a little quirky with the residents. It had only been 1 year since Undertale had released, and people were still riding the waves of its popularity, and this demo got its fair share of attention. People were excited. And then, nothing. For people not actively keeping up with the developers, this disappeared off the face of the earth. For years. Maybe an odd video or post, hell, there was even an animation, but still nothing. 7 years. 8 since Undertale's release. For 7 years we waited. For 7 years we forgot. Before suddenly, the news hit like a stray bullet. Oh my god. That was an 8 years well spent. Now, Undertale Yellow is the kind of project I like to call a love child. It was a love letter. Look, point is, when you look at this, and then you look at this, you're instantly gonna think, oh yeah, they really wanted to make an Undertale game. Not a fight sim or a battle, but a game. Which is a feat in and of itself, because I watched that one Pirate Software YouTube short, and I know how horribly coded Undertale was.
It is horrible.
That means A, this team coded it exactly like Toby Fox did and went through all that hassle, or B, they managed to work a way around that and fixed all that shit. Considering that the Frisk dance isn't here, I'm assuming it's the latter. Oh shit, wait. Undertale was a uniquely expansive RPG with niche mechanics and, more importantly, a message. A message that not everyone is your enemy, because in this world, there are no bad people. Just people in bad positions. Well, unless you're Flowey, but he gets a pass because he literally has no emotion anymore. Undertale was a statement. Undertale Yellow is that statement's second stanza, at least from our point of view. So inevitably, we'll ask the questions and make the comparisons, trying to come to the conclusion whether or not this game can really bear the name of its predecessor. Is that fair? Is it necessary? No. But it's gonna happen. And if it's gonna happen, we might as well be a little thorough about it. And by thorough, I mean give my opinion. Like that means shit. Oh well. Undertale Yellow is something special. You're introduced with that familiar music and that familiar opening style to get you in the mood, and then you're thrust into something that you think you know. It's such a smart little thing they do to hook you in, and then you start to notice all the little things. Flowey's not here. Toriel looks different. There's a hole in the floor. There's a hole! And now Now we're Undertale Yellow, baby. So let me just ask you, what makes Undertale? What aspects of that game make it what it is? What are the standout parts of its relative innocuousness and simplicity? Was it the game itself? Was it the music? Was it the characters, the story, the little secrets and playful mysteries? Really, that could be said about any game. But what about Undertale's each and every one of those makes it so lovable? Well, honestly, Undertale's biggest strength have these guys. You know, one of the biggest things about Undertale are the characters. The characters and their obvious tropes and traits, yet they don't feel shoehorned in. They have this uncanny naturality to them, as if they're just meant to be the way they are. So quirky and fluffy that they give you this sense of, oh, classic move whenever they do or say something. Toriel is your mom. Papyrus and Sans are eccentric and stupid. Undyne is brash and passionate. Alphys is strangely topical. It all just fits. And this cast of characters, honestly, they're not bad. Like, it could be a whole lot worse. Some are more compelling than others, and actually Undertale holds two advantages over Undertale when it comes to their characters, but we'll get there. And I suppose I should say spoiler alert. I'm going to be talking about a few spoilers, and I'll preface the big ones before I say them to give people a chance to go play this for themselves. Please play this game. Please. The actual cast of characters the game adds is a little smaller than the ones you get in Undertale, or at least the ones that actually matter. There's Dal for the Old Ruins, Martlet for Snowdin, Starlo for the Wild East, and Ceroba and Axis for the Steamworks, but not actually, because what Undertale Yellow does, which differs from Undertale, is incorporate these different characters into the different areas from where they were introduced in. This incorporation is universal, and it's not locked behind doing certain events or anything, it's part of the main story. Martlet meets you in Snowdin, but later on finds you again in the Dunes and into the Wild East, where she's then part of the main story from here on out. Ceroba gets to know you in the Steamworks, but she's also present in the Wild East with Starlo and the gang and interacts with the antics there. Same with the Feisty Five, who get more screen time after their segment is over. This decision is something I really like because it makes me feel as though everything is more cohesive, that the underground is a functioning world and society where things are interlinked like that. Toby does this in Undertale too, but I feel like it's done more through dialogue and talking to NPCs that reference other things rather than it being shown in the story. Showing versus telling, at least in this case. Undertale's segments feel more rigid. Snowdin constantly bombards us with Papyrus and Sans' contrasting personalities and their zany puzzles. Waterfall has us constantly running for our life with Undyne on our tails, and Toriel is our mom. But once that part's over, that's it. Undyne stays in Waterfall and we move on to Alphys and Metaton. Hell, we never even get to talk to Toriel again after the ruins. But there's one thing that Undertale Yellow really hooks me on, and maybe it's because of my little stimulus chasing brains, but characters in this fangame can join your party, namely Martlet and Ceroba. Sure, this is the character section, why are you even bringing this up? Well, my friend, that's because of this little button here. The talk button is perhaps the most distracting thing in this game, and I love it. With this button, we get to talk to our party member about a specific room or any other random thing, and we get so much more with this. We get to hear Martlet ramble on in all of her airheadedness, and it's super charming to hear her thoughts. Not only that, but we get these little tidbits that try to make sense of the RPG mechanics, like battle music. Apparently, according to Martlet, the themes you hear are heard by everyone, because when a monster focuses, their brain frequencies magically start to play music. It's a fun detail. And talking to Ceroba is interesting too. Note I say interesting, not fun, because this chick is hella depressed for, well, reasons. I'm telling you, I was addicted to this button. You could call Papyrus an Undertale too, but I feel like this is just way better because the character is there with you and you're directly talking to them about what's to come or what's directly in front of you. One little gripe I have when it comes to characters is Dolph, who, compared to the rest of the cast, is so much less relevant. He's sort of like the Toriel of the game, where once you leave him, you aren't really supposed to see him again, but he just doesn't have the same impact that Toriel did. Toriel was our mom. Dalv is just some weird, quirky Marceline the Vampire Queen looking hikikomori who likes corn. That's his main character trait. It's funny, and I hate that I find it funny because it's so shallow. To me, it feels like Dalv's lack of substance was skirted around by making him as quirky as possible, like giving him a balloon in a closet named Pops. You know, maybe Cartoon Network wasn't so far off the mark. The devs wheel around his lack of involvement by making you talk to him later when fast travel is unlocked, where it shows you that you actually convinced him to give the outside world a shot, and there are also a couple of small hints here and there as to the whole reason why he hid himself away in the first place. It all links to the human who came before Clover, and actually Axis is involved in that too, but I'll leave that to anyone who wants to play the game. But I mentioned Clover, and this is my second reason for why I really like the characters in this game. Clover is a real person. In comparison to Frisk, Clover feels more human because Clover does things, they think things, they have moments of introspection, they have dialogue options, limited as they are, and it feels like they embody their soul trait. I mean, they had a reason for going into the underground. That's one more reason than Frisk had. And that's not dissing Frisk, because they definitely have their moments of emotion. In fact, their scarcity almost makes them more special, but that doesn't really push aside the fact they feel like a blank slate at times. Clover feels like they fit into this world, whereas Frisk just inserted themselves and got the golden ticket. And as for how Clover fits, that lies within the story. Undertale's story was simple. Frisk fell into the underground, and it's assumed they wanted to get out because they fell by mistake. I mean, who climbs an entire mountain by themselves and falls in by mistake? Let's just ignore all the crazy fan theories for a second. Clover goes to the underground specifically for the other 5 children, the ones who had gone missing. They want justice for them, for their families, and for Clover's own self. That self-sense of justice quite literally defines Clover, just how saving defines Frisk's. Don't come for me, theorists, I'm just trying to prove a point. Toriel finds them, then loses them, then Clover meets Flowey, who currently has the most determination in the underground. That means he can save and load whenever he wants, which is a horrifying thought. And yes, spoiler warning, they do play into that later on. Clover then does much the same as Frisk, solving puzzles, meeting people, and choosing whether or not to spare or kill the monsters they come across. They meet the reclusive Dolv, whose position as the first boss shown in the demo severely hinders his activity in the plot, then Martlet, the inventor and general lovable idiot, and they finally make it to the dunes, the one part in the game that made me go, oh yeah, we're finally here, where they eventually meet the eccentric North Star and the feisty 5, and oh my god, is that Undertale Red? Then they finally go through the steamworks with Ceroba, getting past Axis and triggering the final act of the game. And before we get into that final act, I'd like to take a moment to discuss with you the underlying tone behind Undertale Yellow and its narrative. Within Undertale, there's a very minute emotion that flows around the characters in the underground. We are reminded at the end of the day that the monsters are trapped here by humanity and that they're desperate to get out and finally have their freedom. Despite their cozy little homes and fun personalities, they never had a choice, and it could be seen that some of their actions are to deal with that lack of choice. Undertale Yellow really leans into this point of view. At this point, only 5 out of the 7 souls needed to break the barrier have been captured, and it's been God knows how long since they were trapped. At least a few generations have gone by, which means that some of the monsters here have only ever heard stories about the surface. The underlying tragedy and sadness really ramps up later on in the game, but can be showcased with the town of the Wild East. This place, put simply, is a front. It's like a theme park, a convention for all things Wild West back up on the surface. It's all an elaborate plot by the town's sheriff, North Star, aka Starlo, a nervous little farmer from up north of the town and childhood friend of Ceroba the Fox. People in the underground are a little sad, and he just wants to give them some entertainment, a little taste of the surface. And of course, there are good chunks of residents in the underground who shun the idea of idolizing human culture, but people still get a kick out of it. People are having fun, people have jobs, and Starlo's happy with that. And then we get Ceroba's story. Hers is perhaps the most cut and dry tragic tale given to us. Through cutscenes and talking, we understand that her husband, Chujin, was an engineer/inventor who has already passed away. We are also given that her daughter Kaneko is, at the very least, missing, given to Alphys during an initiative after she had an accident, and we're made to assume that initiative eventually led to the amalgamates in Undertale. We learn that Ceroba is unable to let go of her past and constantly wallows in her sadness born of loss and regret. Her story is what kicks the final act into overdrive, and spoilers for that story from here on out, like I haven't been spoiling you this entire time. It's revealed that Ceroba has had malicious intent, leading Clover to the lab in order to produce a serum blueprinted by her late husband. This serum could theoretically turn any monster into a boss monster, like Asgore and Toriel. and this serum would be extracted from someone with a boss monster gene injected with pure human essence. Pure meaning non-malicious and magnanimous, someone like Clover during a true pacifist run. This serum would give conditional immortality and immense strength to anyone who would take it, and assumedly their offspring. From there, taking over the surface didn't sound so outlandish. Thing is, Shujin had a human soul, one that he extracted essence from, coming from the last human who fell, one of the humans that Clover is looking for, and who we assume to be the Integrity Soul. But from what we can gather, they weren't exactly the nicest of people, and had attacked and killed multiple monsters, hence, as an impure soul, it couldn't be used for the serum. In addition, Shujin's constant self-testing had resulted in the worsening of his condition and his eventual death. But in his last days, he told Ceroba about his secret research and asked her to complete it. That left Ceroba with her daughter, a holder of the boss monster gene, impure human essence that she thought she had purified, and a death wish. Perhaps it was only natural that she would make the worst decision of her life. She sent her daughter to Alphys in hopes of somehow finding a way for her to get better, leaving her to be swallowed whole and devoured by her regret. That is, until Clover arrived. They hadn't hurt a soul. They were pure. Just. If they could get this kid to the lab, then extract their essence, maybe there was a way to save her daughter and create that boss monster serum. Clover and Martlet learn this after Starlo warns us and chases after a fleeing Ceroba. But Clover, being Clover, decides that the only way to settle this is some good old-fashioned frontier justice, and decides to confront Ceroba herself. And that we do in this amazing 4-phase boss fight. God, it's so good. The music in this intense blend of Undertale and Toho that just wraps you around the fight, which fits because of the bullet hell you're subjected to, as well as Ceroba's general character design. A Mother's Love is this epic ballad filled with Ceroba's emotion and absolute devotion. Undertale Yellow's OST is chock full of motifs, old and new, and this song is no different. The sprite animation is so exaggerated and fluid, showing how Ceroba is truly alive in this pursuit to complete her husband's work. And the music cues, the cues! As we blast our way through Ceroba's defensives, a throwback to Undertale's Yellow soul mechanic, we chip away at her mask and reveal the truth behind her story. Bit by bit, we shave away her will to fight, making her all the angrier in the process, and each time, there's a musical and sound effect cue to reel us back in post-melancholic cutscene. And when we finally get the full story, Hopes and Dreams gets reprised and extended to highlight how everything is on the line, how Ceroba feels like this is the be-all and end-all, and without this, there's nothing else to live for. I can't put it up there with the Azrael fight, but for the sheer spectacle that it is and the adrenaline-filled battle I experienced, it's definitely on Undertale's true pacifist heels. But when we finally outlast Ceroba's assault, we're given the choice. Just as we were given the choice against Flowey in Undertale. Do we do as she wishes and give her the death she wants, or do we show mercy and allow her to find a reason to keep living? This choice is imperative. It splits the true pacifist into two, and because I'm different and have an incessant need to feel special, I like to call these routes something else. In Undertale, we had pacifists where we didn't hurt a single monster but didn't do all the character bonding events. There was true pacifists where we did all those events. There was neutral, which was just pacifist but you'd killed some monsters, giving you one of many variations of this ending. And there was genocide. In Yellow, there's no pacifist route. There's just true pacifist because there are no extra requirements to get it like in Undertale. An insipid distinction, but bear with me. Because there's only true pacifist, I've defined the route where we comply with Ceroba's wish as justice and sparing Ceroba as true justice. If we kill Ceroba, which was in compliance with her wishes, we don't earn XP, we don't gain love. She simply dusts away as we act in self-defense and fulfill her wish. Starlo, enraged, doesn't give you the time of day and storms off as you essentially killed his best friend. Martlet is apprehensive but understands why you did what you did, and you both take off to meet Asgore to escape the underground and find the human souls. Everything plays out eerily similar to Undertale's pacifist route as we finally come face to face with the king and tell Martlet to leave us be. From there, Asgore leads us to the barrier and reveals to Clover the 5 human souls he has collected so far. And for the first time, Clover reacts with anger, what I can only assume to be anger as they tremble with rage and draw their gun out unprovoked. something that Clover hasn't ever done if you played by sparing all the monsters. This singular action really moved me, because it, along with all the other little things in this game, shows that Clover really does have a sense of justice. Face to face with Asgore, the one responsible for ordering the deaths of all human children who fell down, Clover becomes enraged and prepares to fight in order to bring justice to their killer, direct or otherwise. Honestly, I think this is the most canon ending we got. I like to think Clover made it to the end and confronted Asgore in this impossible battle for justice, and Asgore tossing away the hat and gun, not wanting to lay eyes on the proof of his slaughter any longer than he has to. Sparing Ceroba gives us the true justice route, where Starlo and Martlet wake up and they make amends before discussing the future of Clover, whether it's possible for them to live in the underground even if it means sacrificing the future children. And it's at this point we're given a different perspective on Clover's justice. Looking back on their adventure and all the people that they've met, ignoring that nagging voice in the back of their head, they realize that the greatest justice they can contribute to is the freedom of the underground. This revelation is what drives them to give up their soul, much to the shock of the party present. No amount of talking could back them out of this decision, and Ceroba understands that. The following goodbyes got me damn near crying, and I don't cry easy. The only time I've ever cried to a piece of media was episode 10 of Violet Evergarden, you know the one. But when Martlet hugged Clover with all her might, that really punched me in the gut. God. And when all was said and done, Clover allows Ceroba to take their soul, earning even the meager respect of Flowey as they drag themselves to a wall and let the whispers of the wind take them to rest. I love these endings. Both of these really just make Clover stand out as their own character, a character with their own motivations who makes their own decisions, as opposed to the roll with the punches approach Frisk goes with. Neutral reveals that Martlet had a contingency for if you were to start eradicating monsters, before refusing to take you to Asgore and offering you to stay with her to try become a better person. Then Flowey murders her, then takes your soul, and then resets after you say nah. This does really highlight Clover as much as it just gives you a freaky ass final boss fight, which is honestly more crazy than Omega Flower despite all the similarities. But I want to talk about the final ending. For justice and true justice, we're shown different aspects of how Clover interprets their mission, to confront the killer or to sacrifice for a greater. Both valid ways for their soul to shine the sheen of justice it's colored. However, this final route twists that justice in something I like to call the vengeance route. Small note, I looked on the wiki and apparently people have already been calling this the vengeance route, so I'm just going to say I was ahead of the gun on that one. Clover has a mission. They had a reason to go into the underground, the 5 missing children. In the other routes, they acted on the principle of innocent until proven guilty, guilty being Asgore's possession of the 5 souls. In the vengeance route, Clover acts on the principle of guilty until proven innocent, and when proven innocent, don't give them a chance to plead their case further. Justice comes in many forms, and for some, that justice comes in the form of revenge. Revenge against the underground for taking those children's lives. Everyone is admissible for their deaths, simply by not stopping them. By that logic, their judgment comes at the end of a smoking barrel, and Clover administers the harshest sentence admissible by a child. Gun. I don't call this route genocide because, while that's an appropriate descriptor for what's happening, it's more than that. Unlike Frisk, who, by virtue of Sans telling us, is simply doing this because they're probably bored, Clover has a reason. They've always had a reason, from the very start. So it's more than just a massacre. This is targeted, purpose-filled, as if under the iron sight of a 6-shooter. And it's clear that Clover still retains an essence of being human. When Starlo challenges them to a duel, they don't just ignore him and shoot him dead. They agree. They follow the rules and they win because they aren't doing this for fun. There's a sense of justification, a sense of nobility. As if to prove a point, they agree to the duel. And this just furthers my love for Clover's characterization. I mean, Frisk had to go around looking for monsters to kill to gain LV, a representation for how easy it is to distance yourself from hurting others. Clover? Clover doesn't have to do that shit. Just hearing about how Axis murdered a child is enough to boost them from love 13 to 19. Imaginary technique. Fuck you, Yellow. They're so filled with justice that the feeling of being justified is enough to put them on the same level as the kid who beat Sans. That's just awesome. What I also love is, by the end, a high LV Clover has more determination than Flowey, allowing them to save, implying that any soul can have determination, and that the traits of a soul are almost like sliders and not mutually exclusive boxes. This was also shown in Ceroba's fight too, when Clover refused to die in the first phase, but I think Clover constantly loading over Flowey was a lot more obvious and cathartic. Ironically, this is arguably also the best ending for Clover, whereas it was the worst ending for everyone in Undertale, a la Kara intervention. I won't go the full 9 yards explaining this route because honestly, you should at least play this one for yourself for how much of an experience it is. I mean, they added new puzzles. How cool is that, huh? Just know that what Martlet told you in the neutral route wasn't a tidbit to be ignored. All the little things in this game are everything. Just like Undertale, the humor is stupid and silly and takes after the Earthbound style of writing that Undertale emulated, and all these little things are everywhere. Just like when we walk through Waterfall with Monster Kid, we get the cart ride in the mines and the raft scene with Martlet, as well as the horizon on top of the dunes. Beautiful set pieces with care administered surgically. The music is immaculate, using motifs where necessary rather than it being shoved in. I mean, when we took that ever-familiar elevator up to Hotland and heard the synth slowly increase in volume, just mwah. Oh, and the secrets, so many hidden things, showing the Undertale community that mystery is not synonymous with WD fucking Gaster. Fanservice was everywhere, and yet it was still somehow tasteful. How? Red's origin story is here. How can that be here and still feel tasteful? 8 years since Undertale released has this idea been brewing. An idea for a game that takes all the parts that people loved about Undertale and spinning it into its own narrative. A narrative that's arguably stronger, with characters that aren't mirrors or parallels, but rather their own characters. With a story filled with love and tragedy and regret and loss and hopes and dreams for a better future. With an OST that pays homage, with a beautifully crafted environment painstakingly made to draw the eye and attention of the player, all to embody that feeling we got playing Undertale for the first time, all wrapped in a nice package with a label of a prequel. Thank you, Team Yellow. Those 8 years of love were well spent, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for this masterpiece of a love letter you've given us, the community. Play this game. Seriously, just play it. Even you, Toby. Who am I kidding? He's not here. And if you're wondering where Sans was during your genocidal rampage, the answer is in Deltarune, the official prequel to Undertale. Bye-bye.